The you he's talking about is the image that he sees in the mirror. It's dog whistle politics on top of a national trend of individuals across the globe. If you look at protesters, you see America, you see young, old, black, white, people who are concerned not only about our democracy, but making sure we address the structural.
I'm going to turn this off real quick while viewing this episode that's taking place today down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, pertaining to the Trump campaign rally that's supposed to go on later on this evening and tonight. First of all, after the events took place in my life in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma in 2009, I decided to go out to Arkansas and work for a while, up pretty close to where Sam Walton had started his business, Walmart, back years ago, over in the northwest part of Arkansas. Things didn't work out for me there in northwest Arkansas, primarily because I was under a watch list at that time, because I had made the headlines in the news out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, whenever they planted a bomb in the back end of my truck and activated the bomb and basically destroyed a camper shell that was on the back end of my automobile. But while in that vicinity, I decided that I would go back into Oklahoma, but this time not go back into downtown Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but go to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Once more, I had my tools, I had my credentials, I had lots of experience. At the time, I was in shape. Why wouldn't somebody looking for a good ace body man, a seasoned body man, not be willing to look for somebody such as myself? I went to work for an outfit there in Tulsa, and we got something going on, looks like here. I don't know what this is. Anyways, let me stop this for a second. Anyways, while I was out there working in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I was targeted by the Tulsa, Oklahoma Police Department whenever they found out that I was staying in a extended stay hotel being run by a bunch of people from India. I don't know for sure how they found out my whereabouts, but because of that, in which what had went on in my life prior to that, give or take about 2 months, I was still basically on a state watch alert. And at that time, Mr. Pat Burns had not put out a federal warrant, or not a federal warrant, but a state warrant for my arrest while I was out there. So there was no warrants for my arrest, but I was on this watch list. While being out there in the hotel, they basically shook me down one night, give or take about 10 o'clock. There was, give or take, about 12 different squad cars that come to my hotel room out of nowhere, and they made me walk out of the building backwards with my hands on top of my head, and made me get down in the parking lot with my knees and my face down to the parking lot, being drawed on by officers with guns. After they basically searched my truck and searched my hotel, they let me go because of the paranoia, of the sensitivity of what had just recently happened in my life, give or take about 2 months, down in downtown Oklahoma. This would have been in 2009. It was the only body shop that I've ever worked at that the owner, within the first few hours that I was working there, walked up to me and said, "Dennis, we have some instructions we need to give to you about a certain employee here in the shop." I go, "Okay, what's up?" They go, "Well, whenever this person right here went to work for us back about 8 years ago, this person was Bob. Bob decided that Bob was dissatisfied in being Bob, and Bob wanted to become Betty. Bob went out and had an operation done, and now Bob is Betty, but Betty still has the same qualifications that Bob had pertaining to doing body work. By and large, we can't fire her because we had initially hired her to begin with her qualifications. There was a problem pertaining to the bathroom issues with Betty having to go to the men's bathroom, and because of it, we had to build a complete separate bathroom just for women in the body shop department, because by and large, as many body shops as I've ever been in, there wasn't but very few that I've worked in that had women working actually on cars doing body work actually on the automobile. Very, very few. While I was down in the southern region, it was common to find black body men working and being painters on cars in Birmingham and Birmingham, Alabama, and Montgomery, Alabama, and places in Atlanta. It was pretty prominent in finding black people that had picked up the same trade. But by and large, as far as finding women working on automobiles, you just don't see too much of it because it is a pretty intense occupation. At times it can be very intense. But the owner of the body shop told me, he said, "Whatever you do, do not aggravate Betty because she used to be Bob." He goes, "You'll spare me from having to fire you, and you'll spare me of a possible lawsuit if you agitate this person in any form or fashion. In other words, don't discriminate against Betty, even though Betty used to be Bob, and we hired Bob as a body man that turned into Betty." So that was kind of a upside down, unusual event that for a Tennessean working in the auto body industry basically all his life, that I had extreme situation have to deal with. And also, whenever that didn't work out for me towards working in that particular body shop, that same outfit allowed for me to go to Sand Springs and work in that particular body shop under the same name. And that's whenever I got to meet Big Jim and his son Brandon, that used to have a body shop, I don't know if they still do, called the Iron Horse Collision Body Shop there in Sand Springs, Oklahoma. I never did actually work for Brandon or work in Brandon's shop, but I know Brandon very well pertaining to Jim's son. I just wanted to give you a bit of information in what you're fixing to observe here in regards to the Tulsa Police Department, in regards to a peaceful protester who has walked into the Donald Trump rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, wearing a t-shirt, "I Can't Breathe," that decided that she was going to, I guess, do an open, silent protest in sitting down and causing attention to be brought to herself. And because these Tulsa cops or Homeland Security, one or the other, does not appeal to her behavior, they are fixing to basically expend upon to this woman's rights in having this girl arrested, even though she's a citizen of Oklahoma, and even though she had never had a prior record of being arrested. They're fixing to expand upon to this woman's rights by having her physically removed from her being an open protester at this rally. Once more, I Can't Breathe is the subject matter in behind Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter movement is the subject matter of brutality cops or police officers abusing their authority in this very way. So if you don't mind, please watch this. I found it to be a bit awkward, and I also found it to be inappropriate for her to be arrested, even though she was not bothering absolutely nobody. Please watch.
That the lives of Black matter. Black lives matter. The only reason why we've gotten to this place is because of the rash of individual acts, whether it was vigilantes with Trayvon Martin, or law enforcement who simply disregard the life of Black, whether it's jury nullifications of convicting those involved, Zimmerman, or the refusal of district attorneys.
Keep in mind, the exact same thing happened to me in Madison County down in Jackson, Tennessee, whenever Homeland Security and the Jackson police officers first confiscated the sword symbolizing peace on earth from the Windmill Ministries missions. After they had confiscated the sword and charged me with a deadly weapon, was whenever, about a week later, I decided to go back down to the courthouse and make a public stand similar towards what this woman right here is doing. And they basically called in 6 police officers that grabbed me up, throwed me in the back end of a police car, and ushered me from Jackson, Tennessee down to Bolivar, Tennessee, wanting to know what my problem was. And I was explaining to the psychiatric community down in Bolivar towards the prophecies of end-time biblical Bible prophecy, which was basically like talking in the wind, or basically talking to a tree, because obviously these people either didn't understand or wasn't capable of understanding, or they themselves was against biblical Bible prophecy that has put us where we are today with all these troubles. I'm just using this, I'm paraphrasing this, that I myself was sitting on the lawn. I had a sign in front of me. I was not screaming and hollering. I didn't have a foghorn. I didn't have some sort of a amplified device. I was just sitting there minding my business when suddenly I was apprehended by the Madison County police officers and thrown into a psychiatric ward, which I hate to say it, but the very same thing may very well happen to this woman right here, this girl that has never been arrested, according to her words. She's a Tulsa citizen that has never had a ticket in her entire life. But the very same thing may happen to this particular young girl, simply because she's standing up and she's making a stand. She's wanting to be heard, which is the First Amendment rights. She's wanting to be heard because of something that she disagrees with that's been going on nationwide. Similar towards what I was disagreeing with towards the police officers that confiscated the sword, symbolizing peace on earth, without any valid warrant and without any valid reason. It took the police officers basically 30 to 45 minutes to finally get the case open on the sword box that the sword was in, before they finally confiscated the sword, throwed it in the back end of their trunk in their police car, and basically destroyed the object, which the sword itself was so dull you couldn't even hardly cut hot butter with it. It was strictly to be used as a teaching aid at that time in the beginning developments of the Windmill Ministries, going all the way back to 1989. whenever I see stuff like this, it's very disheartening to me, because I know the very Constitution that my father fought for in World War II and other wars that have been fought here in America, that we're supposed to have rights, but whenever you have dirty, corrupt law enforcement agencies that don't care about people's rights, it basically puts us where we are right now towards all these troubles at bay. Please watch this.
Up and value a black life, as we have seen with the Ahmaud Arbery case, the Breonna Taylor case, where those officers still have not been brought to justice.
Hey, Derek, take a look if you can at the screen. And for all of you, we're looking live at what's happening in Tulsa right now. You see increasing tension, shall we describe it. Two officers have come into that picture. There you see somebody who is protesting Black Lives Matter, saying, "I can't breathe," on behalf of Black Lives Matter, sitting down very quietly there in the middle of the street, although she's clearly being asked some questions. The man in gray, if I read his card lanyard thing correctly, that says that he's part of the Trump rally. It looks like this woman is beginning to pray. You have two police officers that are circling quite closely. Certainly not keeping 6-foot distance in these COVID times, that's for sure. Let's listen to somebody exchange.
I don't know if you have a right to be here. It's a private event. They can ask you to leave, man. So it's a private event. They can ask whoever they want to leave to leave.
Not where you think will happen.
Are you going to make this force you out?
Yes. Yes. This woman. This woman, Derek, is saying that she's got a right to be there.
Yeah, man, I know everything. Brother, I completely agree.
Which, of course, she does. And clearly this has caught the attention of the news media. And you can see that she has placed herself right in front of the area through which anybody attending this Trump rally tonight has to walk to get their face masks, hand sanitizers controlled. We haven't seen evidence of temperatures being taken yet. Perhaps that happens a bit closer to rally time and closer to the actual arena itself. But it would look as if that police officer is calling a superior, calling somebody to say, this is the situation. Take a listen.
But there's plenty of room out
My country. This is my country. This is my city. I have tickets for this event.
everybody that comes back.
I have 12 dogs. I'm protected.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the problem?
It's a private event. What we call the permit, this is a private event. This is our area.
Part of my event.
And when we ask you to leave, that's like asking somebody to leave your own personal private property. Same deal.
I've been invited and I have to take off.
Yeah, but my job with the campaign is to officially uninvite you and ask you to leave.
So Derek, I know you're watching this along with me. We just heard her say that she has tickets to this event, so she has every right to be here. She would have a right to be there regardless of whether or not she had tickets. But what do you think when you see something like this, someone very boldly standing up to authority there and just saying, look, I'm just trying to sit here and make my statement with my T-shirt and say to folks, you cannot remove me.
You know, I hope Congressman John Lewis is watching this. This is called getting in good trouble. This is in the legacy of Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, and so many others who are using the power of their agency to have peaceful protests in the midst of unjust situation. As you see her, she is an admitted guest of the event. She is peacefully sitting and praying. She's properly clothed with a mask on. One of the law enforcement officers, he doesn't even have a mask on. I hope Congressman Lewis is watching this. This is consistent with getting in good trouble. She is getting in good trouble. And what we're seeing now is the campaign not wanting to have a counter narrative, a counter image that address the unjust realities that we've seen across this country. And she sit there and say, I cannot breathe. That is the message that so many African Americans, particularly African American beings, have been saying for decades. We cannot breathe under a structural system that's both oppressive and refuse us to exist in a just society that provides equal protection under the law.
And as you look,
I want to weigh in once more again. Before this event started unfolding about this girl, getting in trouble here with the authorities. I just gotten off the telephone speaking to Mr. Pat Burns, that was the captain there in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, during the time that they roughed me up the way that they did towards planting a bomb in the back end of my truck and blowing the back end of my truck up in 2009. Mr. Burns is now working on the council underneath the mayor there at West City, Oklahoma, that's still involved with law enforcement, but he's more in a relaxed mode. And I questioned him a while ago if he was going to be going to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and his response was absolutely not. He didn't want no part of that circus down there, and that he had various things that he was going to do today, and it was not to go down there and police the situation towards what the heck is going on probably less than 2 hours away from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I believe that I'm correct on that pertaining to the distance driving wise. I may be a little off, but it ain't too much off pertaining to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and downtown Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Sand Springs from Tulsa, Oklahoma is 8 miles. Where Big Jim, that I used to work for, and his son Brandon, they're at the Iron Horse Collision. But his response was, I am not going down there because it's going to be nothing but a circus.
I commend her.
You look at this Trump campaign worker, Derek, who's specifically trying to place himself between her and some sort of a news or media crew that are trying to get her opinion. You see, he went right there to try to block their ability to get her either on camera or appropriately with a microphone. You know, something like this, Derek, good trouble, yes. Abiding by all the rules, yes. But do you worry that this could potentially not end well for her, for this demonstrator?
Well, unfortunately, I do. I mean, you have individuals who align themselves with a perspective. They say they want freedom of speech. They say they want freedom of expression. She's demonstrating that, but they would deny her because the speech that she's speaking, they disagree with. She is in her right. It's a private event, but she has done everything necessary to be an invited guest. She has a ticket. She's there. And there's nothing wrong with her sitting there. The way she's sitting there, she's not disturbing anyone. They may dislike her shirt. They may not want her to be interviewed. But if those individuals say that they value the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, she's practicing her First Amendment right, which is a supreme amendment in this country, the freedom of speech.
Just watching that Tulsa police officer approaching her, certainly within the 6 feet distance, but appropriately masking himself while speaking with her. That is something we have to note that is positive. Let's see if we can listen to what he's saying.
My upper chain of command that if you refuse to leave, we have to arrest you for trespassing, and I really would rather not do that.
I'm staying here.
All right, where's my gray shirt guy? Can you get him over here?
Okay, Derek, he has just said that she is going to be arrested for trespassing, that they have the right to do so. He did very politely say, I don't want to have to do that. She said, I'm not moving. Does this still fall, in your mind, under the auspices of good trouble?
Absolutely. She is a ticketed guest to the event. She's not trespassing. She complied with the requirement. She received a ticket. She entered with her ticket, and she's sitting there. She's not disturbing anyone. She's sitting there, and they approached her. Good trouble.
Morgan Chesky has been with us. I presume he's very close to this camera because it is his camera right now. Morgan, thanks for joining us. I think the back of you there. Morgan, what's going on? What are you able to hear that we may not have been able to pick up so clearly?
Somebody has to be there.
Morgan Chesky, can you hear me? I guess he's not able to hear me out, though I think I saw the back of Morgan's head taking a photo there. Maybe he's trying to speak with her. Let's take a listen, guys.
I'm just trying to, I know you're requesting action, so we're going to put hands on him. We're going to gently, but I don't want to hurt you at all. Last thing I want to do
Yeah, I'm here.
we're going to.
Hey, Morgan, I understand that you're now hooked up with us. Tell me what just transpired. Has he said that he's going to have to put cuffs on her? What did we just miss there? I was trying to strain as I listened.
Yeah, Alex, if you can hear me right now, we are just a few feet away from this, and a Tulsa police officer has instructed this woman that if she won't comply, they will remove her for trespassing, and that's what they're doing right now. She said they're removing her from the scene, Alex, and we're right behind Tulsa police here. We're just going to keep moving along with them. This woman told police just minutes ago, Alex, that she had a ticket.
Yeah, so how's that
and
trespassing?
the officer said just because you have a ticket. That's what we're trying to figure out right now, Alex.
Yeah.
They're arresting me. They're
And they're
arresting me.
it appears they're placing her under arrest right now, Alex.
I've done nothing. I have tickets to this event.
And you know they're trying to listen to what she's saying. Bear with me.
No, I'm not arrested. I'm not.
So, hey, Morgan, let me check where she was sitting. Was she in any way impeding access to the event?
Ow! No, they hurt.
Alex, from our vantage point, it did not appear that she was impeding access.
Stop it.
She was wearing an I Can't Breathe shirt. We know she was pulled from the crowd as they began to enter this venue. We're going to keep walking down the sidewalk here, away from the main entrance point. We have several Tulsa police officers. We know that handcuffs have been placed on the woman right now. I'm just behind them. And they asked her beforehand, ma'am, we don't want to take you out by force. However, if you don't comply with us, we're going to have to remove you from this setting right now. And so, ma'am, if you can hear me, can you tell me what officers told you that you did wrong?
I was trespassing and breaking the law. And they're arresting me. I've never been arrested before in my life.
So they told you that you were trespassing and breaking the law.
And I have a ticket.
What did you come here today to do, ma'am? You had a ticket, right?
Yes. Yes.
And were you coming here to protest the president's arrival, or were you coming to attend the rally? Tell me why. Stay with me, Alex. We're just walking with Tulsa police officers right now.
Are you from an organized group? No. So why did you come today?
It's for 9-7, where's my transport?
Because of this.
Your shirt?
What's happening?
Hey guys, we can swing back around.
Look at me. I can't read. No, they're arresting me for that. They're saying I trespassed.
Who's getting that?
So, Alex, I don't know if you can hear, but the woman just said that they're saying she was trespassing because she had an I Can't Breathe shirt on. She said that was the main reason that she came out here today. We're walking around the barrier here. Stay with me here. We're now about 2.5 blocks away from the main entrance. It appears that Tulsa police is loading her into a cruiser here.
My name is Sheila Buck. I'm a citizen of the United States.
Sheila, where do you live?
Oklahoma. Live here at 420 South. Ow.
Sheila, do you live in Tulsa?
I live in Tulsa.
So Sheila Buck, Alex, is that woman's name.
Yeah.
She's being loaded into the front seat of a Tulsa cruiser for trespassing here at the president's rally.
Hey, Morgan, let me ask you one more question. I mean, I'm just trying to... Oh, no, you go ahead.
For trespassing?
No. Stand by. So it appears, we're now behind the barriers. They're loading Miss Buck into this cruiser. You heard her say that she is a Tulsa resident,
Right.
and that she came out here today to protest wearing that I Can't Breathe shirt. So, That was a very fluid situation here. We do know that she was removed from the crowd initially. She sat down on the pavement outside that entrance here, and that's where officers began to have a dialogue with her, at which point one of the Tulsa policemen said, you know, ma'am, you're being removed from this event for trespassing. You can either stand up on your own and we can walk you outside, or we'll have to take you by force. And that's what we all just witnessed play out right now. This is the first person that we've seen removed from this crowd, upwards of what we're expecting, about 100,000 people. And we're going to follow up. But again, Sheila Buck says that she came here wearing an I Can't Breathe shirt, and then that's kind of what started this arrest that we watched play out in real time. Alex?
But, all right, I just want to double check, and I think I'm answering my own question because I now see those sawhorses there behind you. But there was no way that she was
Alex,
blocking, Morgan, was she blocking foot traffic? Was she blocking car access? Or, I mean, I can't figure out why she would be trespassing if she has a ticket and is there to attend the rally like anybody else.
I apologize. Can't hear you right now, but we're going to work on that.
Okay. You know what, Morgan, you've done a great job bringing that. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let's go to Derek Johnson again with the NAACP president and CEO of that. You see this woman, a Tulsa citizen, identified herself as not only a resident of Tulsa, but a United States citizen being carted away for, as you said, good trouble. As we wrap up our conversation with this extraordinary interlude here, what's your takeaway from this, Derek?
You know, you look at that scene, you have someone who's peacefully demonstrating. She had the right to be in the location. There was no apparent disruption or interference with anyone's ability to participate in the event. She's arrested. But what's striking to me now is the Tulsa police put her in the front seat. Just last week, we seen a teenage boy in Tulsa walking in the street because there are no sidewalks. The grass is overgrown. The police arrest him for jaywalking when there are no streets there are no sidewalks. They handcuffed him and they put him in the back seat. This exemplifies the problem with law enforcement today. These law enforcement officers could have simply said to the Trump campaign team, she's not trespassing. If she has a ticket, she has a right to be here. You may not like what's on her shirt. You may not like the fact that she's sitting down, but she's not trespassing. She's not breaking a law. And these police officers who are poorly trained or aligned with a philosophy enforced a rule that doesn't exist. She should have never been taken out of there. This is good trouble, but this is also the danger that we're living in today. We must end this administration reign of terror against communities across this country.
Derek Johnson, President and CEO of the NAACP. Derek, thank you so much. Thank you for extending your time to stay with us through this particular event. Much appreciated. Joining me right now, California Congressman Ted Lieu, a Democratic member of the House Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committees. Well, we're a little bit late getting to you, my friend, because we had to get through this. What were you thinking as you watched this play out in Tulsa?
Thank you, Alex, for your question. My first thought is she was not doing anything wrong. She simply wore a shirt that said, I can't breathe. And for that reason, they took her out of the line. You know, you hear Republicans talk about free speech all the time until they see speech they don't like. She was not disrupting anyone, and they should not have removed her.
Did you hear anything, Congressman, that made you think that the police acted in any way that was inappropriate other than removing her? And this is not this is a big other. She's being removed for trespassing, and yet she has a ticket and the like. But what I was able to hear on a positive note, at least I believe there was respect shown to this woman who was clearly protesting, and they had their masks on. Did you pick up anything that would change that interpretation?
I did not. Of course, there were also multiple TV cameras filming this incident. So that's one reason we need to have body cams on all police officers. When they know they're being filmed, you're going to tend to get better behavior.
When you consider that this president, as Derek Johnson, my previous guest, had just said, he came to Tulsa because he wanted to get to a rally where he could practice his speech someplace that was safe. How surprised are you that he chose Tulsa, given the fact that we have the Greenwood section noting 99 years going on a century later of those horrific race annihilation there, of so many, 300 people dead, 8,000 people displaced because of the actions there. Did it have to be Tulsa?
No, and it shows that this administration still doesn't get it. For example, we saw that Vice President Mike Pence couldn't even say the words Black Lives Matter. Now, of course, all lives matter, but the reason that we say Black Lives Matter is because the system undervalues Black lives. You've had the systematic murder of Black Americans by our government. That's why we've had millions of protesters and demonstrators. And for the vice president to not understand that, for the president to not be able to say those words, shows you where they're coming from. And you're right that this is a politically safe place for the president, but it is totally not safe for people who are participating because many of them are not social distancing, they're not wearing masks, and they're indoors. This is going to be one big super spready event for COVID-19. And it is really disappointing the president chose to have a rally in the middle of a pandemic.
And you know, to that point, sir, with the campaign having required everybody who attends, who goes inside that arena, some 19,000 expected inside, they have to sign disclaimers saying, if we get sick with COVID, we will not bring suit against either this president or this administration. I mean, what does it say to you that they still plow ahead in this particular time? They could have changed it to an outdoor rally. That at least would have helped by some measure, right?
Absolutely. We know that the places where there's high transmission of coronavirus are indoor places where people are talking and people are next to each other for long periods of time. That is exactly this rally. And not only do we have no social distancing, we have a lot of people who are intentionally not wearing masks. And what we're going to see from this is people getting sick and potentially dying because of this rally, and the President of the United States just doesn't care.
Yeah. Let me ask you a little bit about the John Bolton book. As you know, just an hour and change ago, the Justice Department lost its bid to try to have this book stopped in its tracks. So I say that with air quotes simply because that book has been out there. We here at NBC News have copies of the book. There are multiple reporters that have written about the book. Excerpts have been released, but logistically speaking, it is on its way to being shipped to bookstores and up for public release and sale on Tuesday. But the fact that the federal judge declined to order this thing shut down, try to stop it in its tracks, what does that say to you, and how much have you heard about this book that you think is potentially damning in terms of what John Bolton witnessed during his time with the administration?
So two thoughts. First, the First Amendment is still alive and well. I am pleased that the judge has not restricted this book. And second, the excerpts from John Bolton's book are damning. It shows that Donald Trump puts his own interests above those of America. For him to basically plead with the Chinese president to help re-elect him, that is outrageous. That is traitorous kind of behavior. And the American people have a choice this November. Do they want someone that's going to use foreign countries to assist him? Or do you want someone who's going to put America first? So
that point that you make right there, the book, Bolton is blaming Democrats for what he calls impeachment malpractice because Democrats only focused on Ukraine. Part of what he writes is, had the House not focused solely on Ukraine, then there might have been a greater chance to persuade others that high crimes and misdemeanors had been perpetrated. What do you say to that? That front I'd love you to think about. And also, had he been called up to testify and done so, might there have been a different outcome in the end?
Well, so guess what? We didn't know about that China incident, and you know who knew about it? John Bolton. And he intentionally chose not to come to the House and provide what he knew to the American people at the time. He wanted to have a book and make money off of it. That is despicable. But it doesn't mean that his book is false or not true. In fact, because the administration tried so hard to stop its publication, it tells me that they're scared of what's in this book and that it is true. Because if it's classified, then it has to be true.
And that was the argument that the DOJ was making, that because this book contained classified information, that it should be stopped in its track. And yet when you look at the president's Twitter feed, right, he said that it's just a bunch of lies. How can both be true?
They cannot, and Donald Trump is lying again. What's in this book, if their assertion is that he shouldn't publish it because it's classified, then in fact it is true. So for example, if I told you I had a classified meeting yesterday with people from Mars, that wouldn't be classified because it's not true. It will only be classified if I said something that was true and it was classified.
Representative Ted Lieu, it's good to see you as always. Thank you so much for taking the time for us here on Weekends with Alex Witt. Have a good one. Let's look at less than a mile away, everyone, from the president's rally. We're talking about the Greenwood district of Tulsa, that neighborhood that nearly 99 years ago was burned to the ground in one of the deadliest days in Black history. My colleague NBC's Priscilla Thompson is there along what was known as Black Wall Street. Priscilla, welcome to you. So the reaction to the timing and location of the president's rally, what are you hearing about that?
Well, Alex, good afternoon. Just yesterday, this area was bustling with people walking along these bright yellow letters that read Black Lives Matter in order to celebrate Juneteenth, a holiday that is about freedom and liberation. And many folks here tell me that that is in stark contrast to the message that Donald Trump will likely present this evening. Folks feel that his language is about division and divisiveness, and that's simply not what's needed in the country or in this community at this time. And I actually spoke with the owner of the art gallery here, and he was telling me that if anything, Donald Trump should not be coming here at this time to, hold a rally and energize his base, but rather to educate himself about the history here in Tulsa and to think about the stand that he wants to take in this moment in the United States. Take a listen to what that business owner told me.
It's more about him understanding our history, understanding our plight, and understanding that we're at an unprecedented time right now. And neither Trump nor Pence has said anything in support of the movement, Black Lives Matter, nor said anything about Juneteenth other than that Trump made it popular.
And the other thing, Alex, that I'm hearing from folks down here is that with this Trump rally comes the possibility for protesters and thus counter-protesters, and folks would hate to see any of that spill over into this Black Wall Street area that is still healing and grappling with the complicated history here, and also as they're preparing for the centennial, the 100-year commemoration of that massacre that killed so many people here, Alex.
Okay. Priscilla, real quickly, anybody you speak with planning to attend that rally tonight?
No one that I have spoken with is planning to be there. In fact, one man told me that he would actually close his business if Donald Trump were to come down to this Greenwood area and visit. So folks certainly haven't been talking about going over to the BOK Center for that. Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Priscilla. Let's head overseas now. And all the protests over the death of George Floyd, they are expanding now to more countries already today. Rallies in Paris, Edinburgh, London, all protesting police brutality and racism and supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. Joining me now from London, my colleague NBC's Matt Bradley. Matt, with a good day to you. I know that the rallies there got a little bit tense this time last weekend. How about today? What's it like?
That's right. I mean, Alex, and today it's been totally peaceful, and you can see the police coming up behind me. We're at the trail end of this rather large protest. There's a couple thousand people. We just passed Scotland Yard. And everything here, it's kind of a festival-like atmosphere, but there is a lot of anger and a lot of feeling that, as you mentioned, they want to support their like-minded friends and supporters in the United States, pushing for anti-racism in America. But everybody that I've spoken to here is quick to remind me that this is not an American issue. They've been now protesting for nearly a month now. And for them, this isn't just about showing solidarity with Americans. This is about affecting change here in Britain and throughout the world. And that's why we've seen these protests going on for 4 weeks now. Now, that violence last week you mentioned, there was violence on both sides, but for the most part it was from right-wing protesters who showed up ostensibly, they said, to protect statues in Parliament Square. It's a similar narrative that's kind of spooling out in America, where activists are going after statues, and some people on the right who are supporting President Trump or otherwise are trying to defend them. What we saw last week was a Churchill statue. Someone wrote racist under it. Now today, just back before, you could see that there was a phalanx of police officers who were surrounding that Churchill statue. So this is a very sensitive issue here, and it's one that's really bringing up a lot of the buried ghosts of British past. Alex?
Yeah, it's a tough one because Winston Churchill evokes such reverence, really, with his name and evoking all that he did for the country, and yet certainly there were sides of him that some will definitely call racist. So difficult times there. Matt Bradley, thank you so much from London on that. Meantime, the president is boasting about his executive order on police reform, but my next guest says Trump's action offers Americans merely breadcrumbs.
Once more, the Bible says that in the last days there will be major uprisings that will occur, because basically Christ foreseen the very days that we're in right now in regards towards transparency being brought not just before the Americans but before the world, pertaining to these new inventions that that humanity has brought into society, pertaining to social media, documentation devices, pertaining to phones, and etc. God's Son foreseen 2,000 years ago where we are right now, not just to the extent of uprisings, major calamities happening all over the world pertaining to protesting and police brutality, and now the whites is being called down on the carpet pertaining to them being brutal and bully and not giving not only the black race a chance in life for the most part, but also the red race and other types of races. This is now being brought out in transparency form before the world, and because of it, it's bringing troubles. It's troubling the water. In other words, it's basically toppling the camel's back to the point that this is basically tipping everything over, topsy-turvy. We're living in this era that the Bible was very, very clear was going to occur in this era that we're now in, which verifies that not only is and was Jesus who Jesus said that he was, but it verifies that Jesus was God's only begotten Son, because no one has been able to accurately predict, right down to basically the generation or the era that we're living in, no one but Christ, in it being authentic and right to the letterhead. So as you're watching the remaining of this, which I'm fixing to cut it off, as you're watching the remaining of this, keep in mind that this is all part of biblical Bible prophecy of end-time events that has already been pre-examined, pre-selected, and pre-destiny formed before we ever got to this point. Now the question at hand is, what are we going to do at this point pertaining to either watching it get even worse or possibly seeing it get better pertaining to a great revival? And of course that will be up to society. You know, if society chooses that they want to continue to go on this path of us being trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, no hope in sight, almost 3 million people incarcerated in our United States federal jails, no hope for society pertaining to our healthcare industry, our roads and our bridges is falling apart. We can't get along with each other. The divorce rate's higher than what it's ever been. We're killing more unborn children than what we've ever been. If society wants to continue to go down this path, then society must recognize that we are going to be judged according to the era that we're living in, and this is a reflection upon the unusual environmental crisis that we're going through pertaining to our weather events being absolutely off the charts towards our weather doing what the weather's doing. So please, we're at a crossroads.
Surprise you that was put into this bill, and do you think that would be effective? Will it happen?
It's quite effective, and I think in Colorado, again, it's a state that's well situated. I want to remind our readers that we have, our viewers, 18,000 police departments in this country. Most are under local, municipal, county control. And so Colorado is well situated to make these kind of changes. But I also want to stress that this is just the beginning. Because right now, many of the police reform measures that are being discussed, not just in Colorado, but across this country and in the federal government, they define a problem, the problem too narrowly. We have a much larger systemic issue in this country, and policing is a mere symptom of this greater illness. And the illness that we're struggling with as a nation is a complete disregard for Black people and brown people's humanity. And we have an unfulfilled promise to Black people, which is that they are entitled to the equal protection of the laws. And I'm speaking about the 14th Amendment. And so to this date, in 2020, we're having mere quibbles over what sort of legislation to pass. And the fact that we have to argue passing legislation that would make Black Lives Matter, that's an issue that needs to be addressed on a much larger scale. But I do want to credit Colorado for taking these important affirmative steps.
And I'm going to have Jeremiah comment on this in a second, but it's partly what you wrote about how the president is offering us breadcrumbs with this executive order that he signed on policing this week. What do you mean by that?
Sure, breadcrumbs, it was a mere lip service. So what Trump showed us in that executive order on Tuesday is that he does not actually intend to address this larger issue. And this photo op in front of the Rose Garden, you saw law enforcement behind him. You did not see victims, family members that have lost their loved ones to police violence. And we know historically that if Trump wants to be definitive with an executive order, he is. He leaves no ambiguity when he wants to pass an executive order, issue an executive order banning Muslims from coming into this country. He leaves no question on executive orders about immigration. And this executive order, the breadcrumbs I refer to, was just mere encouragement of how police departments should respond to the type of violence going on. It also perpetuated the myth that it's just a few bad apples. That executive order started with the framing that we have some instances of misconduct, especially in African-American communities. That was his one mention of race in that entire executive order. And we know activists on the ground, demonstrations, not just in this country, but around the world, that this is a much larger issue than a few bad apples. This is a rotten apple tree.
Jeremiah, what do you make of the president's executive order? And do you think anything in that proposal could have prevented the death of George Floyd?
I don't. I think to Alexis's point, we have a more core problem with policing in general. We have a mechanism for public safety that doesn't allow us to guarantee that we can get everybody home safely at the end of the day. And we put a lot of emphasis on fatal encounters, but here in Minneapolis, and I know elsewhere, we have a whole lot of abuses that happen from our police department that fall well short of fatal encounters. And they still harm our communities, and they still disrupt that trust. And so, no, I don't think it goes far.
Can I ask you, Jeremiah, since you were one of the council members there in Minneapolis who voted to disband the police department, tell us about your plan, how it might work, and what kind of reaction you've received.
So, locally we've received actually a good reaction. Obviously it's mixed. People are unsure of what else public safety can look like. For so long, for 150 years in Minneapolis, police have had a monopoly on safety. And so, of course, our imaginations are really restricted when it comes to what else could exist. But a lot of the things that we're looking to do, we already do on some level. We just don't fund those programs. For instance, we have a gang violence intervention program that is extremely successful in transitioning folks out of that lifestyle, more so than just this punitive system. But we don't fund that program in any kind of full, robust way. We have an emergency. We have a mental health response team. But again, it's kind of this little niche, cutesy little thing, highly effective, but we don't treat that program like it's a fully formed program. And so we want to go bigger than that. We want to expand beyond just those two programs, obviously. But I think that that's going to take a lot of engagement with the community. Again, 150 years of the Minneapolis Police Department, replacing it is going to take some time.
Jeremiah Ellison, Alexis Hogue, thank you very much, both of you, for weighing in on all this. So that new book on Melania Trump may reveal a whole lot more than you know about the First Lady, but what's the most significant revelation? The author joins me next.
That's going to do it for this afternoon pertaining to this message. As we say here at the Windmill Ministries again and again and again, Good luck to all of us towards venturing into the future for the betterment of not only ourselves, but for the betterment of our children and our children's children. Thank you for listening, and good luck. Shalom.